Millionaire helps woman involved in a controversial legal case. Evidence presented in court changes the course of the case. Past revelations put the magnate's reputation at risk. An unexpected alliance reveals secrets hidden for years. The sun was setting over New York, painting the skyscrapers with golden hues that contrasted with the elongated shadows stretching across Fifth Avenue. On the top floor of the most imposing building in the area, William Thompson gazed at the city through the windows of his office. At 45, he had built an empire that made other businessmen tremble just at the mention of his name. But on that particular afternoon, something was bothering him. "Mr. Thompson," his secretary interrupted his thoughts, "the board meeting will begin in 5 minutes." William adjusted his impeccable Italian tie and walked down the marble hallway toward the conference room. Each step echoed with the authority of someone accustomed to having the world at his feet. As he entered the room, 10 executives immediately stood up, as if moved by an invisible force. "Gentlemen," he began, his deep voice filling the room, "the numbers from the last quarter are impressive, but..." His speech was interrupted when his personal assistant, Nathan, hurriedly entered the room. "Excuse me, Mr. Thompson, but you need to see this." Nathan placed a tablet in front of him, displaying the headline dominating all news portals: "Multi-million-dollar scheme shakes financial market. Emily Johnson is the prime suspect." The photo showed a woman around 35 years old, with wavy brown hair and determined eyes, even as cameras chased her outside the courthouse. Something about that image captured William's attention in a way he couldn't explain. "The hearing is scheduled for tomorrow," Nathan informed him. "Some of the suspicious transactions passed through subsidiaries of the group." William dismissed the meeting with a wave, ignoring the concerned looks from the executives. Alone in his office, he began researching Emily Johnson, graduated in economics with distinction, a promising career in major financial institutions, a seemingly impeccable life until that moment. How could someone like her be involved in a scheme of that magnitude? On the other side of the city, in a small apartment in Brooklyn, Emily tried to maintain her composure as she spoke with her lawyer, Dr. Anderson, an elderly man who looked as tired as she was. "Emily, I won't lie," he said, adjusting his old-fashioned glasses. "The situation is complicated. The prosecution has documents that seem incriminating, and your defense funds are practically exhausted." "But I'm innocent," she exclaimed, rising from the chair in the small living room. "Someone is using me, doctor. I know I'm being used, but I can't prove it." Dr. Anderson's phone rang, interrupting the conversation. Emily watched as the lawyer's expression gradually changed while he listened to the person on the other end of the line. When he hung up, he looked stunned. "It was William Thompson's office," he revealed, still processing the information. "He wants to take on your defense with the best legal team in the country." Emily felt her stomach churn. "William Thompson? The same William Thompson who..." Her voice trailed off. "Why?" "I don't know," replied the lawyer, "but this might be your only chance." The next morning, the courthouse was surrounded by journalists. Emily, wearing a simple yet elegant suit, tried to keep her head held high as she climbed the stairs of the imposing building. Her heart nearly stopped when she saw William Thompson stepping out of an armored Mercedes, accompanied by a team of lawyers who looked like they had walked straight out of a Hollywood movie. Their eyes met for the first time. William, in his custom-made Italian suit, exuded power and control. Emily, on the other hand, projected a quiet dignity that intrigued him even more. For a brief moment, time seemed to freeze. "Miss Johnson," he approached, extending his hand, "may we speak privately before the hearing?" In a reserved room at the courthouse, Emily faced William with a mix of suspicion and curiosity. "Why are you doing this, Mr. Thompson? What do you gain by helping me?" William allowed himself a small smile. "Let's just say I have a particular interest in uncovering the truth about this case." He paused, studying her reactions. "Besides, something tells me you're not the type of person who would get involved in a scheme of this nature." "You don't know me," Emily replied, keeping her gaze steady. "Not yet," he agreed, "but I intend to. And more importantly, I intend to understand how your name ended up involved in transactions that, curiously, passed through companies in my group." Emily felt a shiver run down her spine. There was something in his words, a veiled implication she couldn't fully decipher. Before she could respond, the door opened. It was time for the hearing. As they walked to the courtroom, Emily couldn't help but think that she was about to step into a much larger game than she had imagined. William Thompson wasn't known for his charity, and she knew she would need to uncover his true motivations before it was too late. The courtroom was packed when Emily entered, accompanied by William Thompson and his imposing legal team. The chatter ceased instantly, replaced by a heavy silence filled with anticipation. In the front row, Emily recognized some of her former co-workers who averted their eyes as she passed. The prosecutor, Dr. Elizabeth Carter, a middle-aged woman known for her relentless cunning, was organizing a stack of documents on her desk. Her confident smile faltered slightly when she saw William Thompson sitting with the defense. "Your Honor," the prosecutor began, addressing Judge Margaret Stevens, "Mr. Thompson's presence in this case raises questions about a potential conflict of interest, considering that some of the transactions under investigation passed through his companies." Dr. Michael Brown, the lead attorney on Thompson's team, stood up calmly. "Your Honor, my client is here solely as a supporter of the defense, with no direct involvement in the case. Your presence is a guaranteed right in a public hearing." Judge Stevens, known for her impartiality, adjusted her glasses as she considered the argument. "Proceed with the presentation of the evidence, Dr. Carter." The prosecutor projected a series of documents onto the screen in the room. "As you can see, Mrs. Emily Johnson, while manager of the finance department, authorized transfers totaling more than $50 million to offshore accounts. The money passed through a complex system of companies before disappearing completely." Emily felt her stomach churn as she saw her name and signature on the documents. They were authentic, yes, but something was wrong. She leaned over to whisper to William, "These transfers were approved by the board. I had all the necessary authorizations." William made a discreet gesture to one of his assistants, who immediately began typing furiously on a laptop. The prosecutor continued, "Furthermore, we found evidence that the defendant maintained a lifestyle incompatible with her declared income." "Objection, Your Honor." Dr. Brown stood up. "The prosecution is attempting to build a questionable profile of my client without presenting concrete evidence." "Objection sustained," declared the judge. "Dr. Carter, stick to the objective facts." During a brief pause, William watched Emily closely. There was something in the way she reacted to each document presented, a mix of indignation and confusion, that seemed genuine. His instinct, usually spot on in business matters, told him there was much more to this story. The first witness called was Paul Richardson, former financial director of the company where Emily worked. His testimony flowed in a rehearsed manner, almost too perfect. "Mrs. Johnson had full autonomy over these transfers," he stated, nervously, adjusting his tie. "We trusted her implicitly." Dr. Brown began his cross-examination. "Mr. Richardson, could you explain why your name appears as a secondary authorizer on several of these transactions?" The former director visibly paled. It was a standard procedure. I signed various documents daily." "Curious," continued the lawyer, consulting his tablet, "because we have just received documents showing that you took 5 international trips coinciding exactly with the dates of the largest transfers." A murmur spread through the room. Emily felt her heart race. It was the first time I had heard about these trips. During the break, William led Emily to a private room. "We need to talk," he said, closing the door. "I've just received information about a series of meetings between Paul Richardson and executives from a company called Global Ventures." "Global Ventures?" Emily frowned. "That name appeared in some reports I found strange, but when I questioned it, I was told it was a long-standing international partner." "It's a shell company," William revealed, his eyes locked on hers. "And do you know the most interesting part? It was registered at the same address as one of my group's subsidiaries overseas." Emily felt her blood run cold. "What does that mean?" "It means, my dear," William replied, his voice low and intense, "that someone is using both you and my companies in a much larger game, and I intend to find out who." When they returned to the courtroom, Emily noticed a subtle change in Paul Richardson's behavior. He seemed restless, exchanging nervous glances with someone in the audience. Following his line of sight, she identified a man in a dark suit she had never seen before, who was constantly taking notes in a small notebook. Judge Stevens announced that the hearing would continue the next day. As everyone stood up, William gently held Emily's arm. "Don't go home tonight," he whispered. "I have a safe apartment where you'll be better protected. I believe things are about to get more complicated." Emily hesitated for a moment, but something in his gaze made her agree. As they left the courthouse through the back, avoiding the press, she couldn't help but feel she was diving deeper and deeper into uncharted waters. The question was, would William Thompson be her savior, or just another part of the scheme about to be revealed? William Thompson's safe apartment was in a discreet building in the Upper East Side, far from the spotlight of the financial district. Emily observed the sophisticated yet impersonal environment, wondering how many other people had taken refuge there. The view from the balcony showed a city that seemed strangely distant from her immediate concerns. "You'll be safe here," William stated, typing a code into the security system. "Only Nathan and I know this address." Emily walked to the window, her footsteps echoing on the wooden floor. "Why do I get the feeling you're more involved in this story than you let on, Mr. Thompson?" William poured 2 glasses of red wine, handing one to her. "Perhaps because I'm starting to realize I've been negligent in certain areas of my business." He paused, studying the liquid in his glass. "Some people may have taken advantage of that negligence." "People like Paul Richardson?" Emily asked, accepting the glass but not drinking. "Among other things," William said, taking off his jacket and loosening his tie, a gesture that made him seem almost human. "My empire was built on absolute control, but in recent years, let's just say I delegated too much power to the wrong people." A distant thunderclap announced an approaching storm. Emily sat on the leather couch, feeling the weight of the day's events. "You know what's most frustrating? I've always prided myself on my attention to detail. How did I not realize I was being manipulated? Sometimes we get so focused on doing our job right that we don't notice the shadows moving around us," William replied, sitting in a nearby armchair. "But now we need to figure out who's behind all of this." William's phone buzzed. It was a message from Nathan. "We found something about global ventures. I need to show you in person." "I have to go," he announced, standing up. Nathan uncovered some information that might be useful. "There's food in the kitchen, and the housekeeper will come in the morning to bring you clean clothes." Before he reached the door, Emily called out, "Mr. Thompson, William, why are you really helping me?" He stopped, his hand on the doorknob. "Maybe because you remind me of who I was before money and power started defining who I am." With those words he left, leaving Emily alone with her thoughts. On the rooftop of the Thompson building, Nathan waited with a folder of documents. "Sir, we discovered that Global Ventures was registered by a law firm in Luxembourg, the same firm that handled the acquisition of your European subsidiary 5 years ago." William felt his stomach drop. "Who authorized that acquisition?" "Albert Mendez, your then legal director." "Albert," William murmured, remembering the man who had been his right-hand man for over a decade, until his sudden disappearance the previous year. "Where is he now?" "No one knows, but—" Nathan hesitated. "We found records of regular transfers to an account in the Cayman Islands in his wife's name." Meanwhile, in the apartment, Emily couldn't sleep. He decided to investigate the place, more out of unease than suspicion. In the library, a book caught his attention, an old biography of William Thompson. As he opened it, a photo fell out. It showed a younger William standing next to Albert Mendez at an awards ceremony. His phone, a new device provided by William, buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Not all empires are what they seem. Look for Project Phoenix in the 2018 archives." Emily felt a chill. How did someone know she had access to Thompson's archives? Unless... The next morning, William returned to find Emily sitting in the living room, surrounded by papers she had printed overnight. "We need to talk," she said, her voice firm. "About Project Phoenix." William visibly paled. "Where did you hear that name?" "The question isn't where I heard it," Emily replied, standing up. The question is why that project's name appears in documents related to global ventures months before the transfers that incriminated me began. Before William could respond, his phone rang. It was Dr. Brown. "Mr. Thompson, Paul Richardson, wants to make a deal. He's willing to tell everything he knows." Emily watched William's expression change. "Something wrong?" "On the contrary," he replied, an enigmatic smile forming on his lips. "The pieces are starting to move exactly as I expected, but I need to be sure of one thing first." He stepped closer to her, his gaze intense. "Emily, what exactly were you doing every Friday after work in 2018? The question caught Emily off guard. How did he know about her secret meetings from 5 years ago? And more importantly, why did it matter now? Emily felt the weight of William's stare. The question about her Fridays in 2018 had brought up memories she preferred to keep buried. After a long moment of silence, she answered, "I was part of a study group on financial innovations. At least that's what I thought at the time." "At the United States Financial Institute?" William asked, his voice controlled. "How did you—" Emily stopped, understanding. "You knew from the beginning, didn't you? That's why you're helping me." William walked to the window, gazing at the city waking up under the morning light. "The Institute was a front, Emily. It was created specifically to identify people like you, brilliant, dedicated, and above all, principled. Identify them for what? To be pieces in a much larger game." He turned to face her. "Albert Mendez, my former legal director, created the Institute. He handpicked key individuals in different financial institutions, people who could eventually be useful or culpable if necessary." Emily felt her blood run cold. "So I was chosen 5 years ago. Everything that happened was planned?" Before William could answer, Nathan hurriedly entered the apartment. "Sir, Paul Richardson was seen entering Dr. Carter's office an hour ago. And there's more. We found records of regular deposits into an account under the prosecutor's name." "My God," Emily murmured, the pieces falling into place in her mind. "The prosecution is involved?" "The scheme is much bigger than we imagined," William confirmed, grabbing his phone. "Dr. Brown, cancel any deal with Paul Richardson and get Chi ready. We're completely changing our strategy." As William made the call, Emily mentally reviewed all the study group meetings. "There was a woman, Marina Adams. She always asked specific questions about the internal procedures at the banks where we worked." William abruptly hung up the phone. Marina Adams was the alias of Sophia Mendez, Albert's wife. The sound of helicopters hovering above the building interrupted the conversation. Nathan rushed to the window. "Sir, the press found the address. They're all down there. How did they—" William stopped, a look of understanding crossing his face. "Of course, that's what Paul Richardson wanted. Not to make a deal, but to create a scandal." Emily felt panic rising. "What now? How am I going to get to the courthouse?" "You're not," William declared, picking up his phone again. "Nathan, activate the contingency plan. Emily, trust me one last time?" She nodded, even though she didn't know what she was agreeing to. Minutes later, a private security team entered the apartment, bringing clothes and equipment. William quickly explained. They would leave separately, her disguised as part of the cleaning crew, him facing the press head-on. "We'll meet in an hour at the spot I arranged with Nathan," William instructed. "And Emily, don't trust anyone. Until then." As they prepared to leave, Emily noticed something familiar on one of the pages scattered across the table. It was an internal memo from the bank where she worked, dated 2018, with her signature. But something was off about that signature. "William," she called, her voice trembling, "look at this. That's not my signature. It's very close, but the final strokes are different." William examined the document carefully. Sophisticated forgery, probably the work of the same person who falsified other documents. He paused, thoughtful. "Emily, did you keep samples of your signature anywhere?" "Only in HR at the bank and—" She stopped, remembering. "At the Institute's registry. We had to fill out a registration form with multiple signatures, supposedly for future certificates." A bitter smile formed on William's lips. "And that's how they got a perfect model to use whenever needed." He checked his watch. "We need to go. Every minute here increases the risk." As Emily was about to leave with the cleaning crew, William gently held her arm. There's something I need to tell you when all this is over. Something about my connection to Albert Mendes and the real reason I'm helping you." Emily wanted to ask more, but the shouts of the reporters downstairs grew louder. It was time to leave, carrying even more questions than answers. As she descended in the service elevator, a certainty grew in her mind. Nothing in that story was a coincidence, and each revelation seemed to open the door to even greater secrets. The historic center of New York, with its narrow streets and historic buildings, offered the perfect setting for discreet meetings. Helena, still dressed as a cleaning staff member, followed Nathan's instructions until she reached a traditional coffee shop, the kind that seemed frozen in time. The place was practically empty, except for an elderly man reading a newspaper and a waitress who seemed more interested in her phone than in the customers. She sat at a table in the back, as agreed, ordering just a coffee. Her thoughts wandered between the revelations of the past few hours when an elegant woman sat down across from her without ceremony. "Marina Adams," Helena whispered, immediately recognizing the woman from the study group. "Or should I say Sophia Mendes?" Sophia smiled, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I see William has already told you a few things, but not the most important ones. Why are you here?" "Because unlike what everyone thinks, neither I nor Albert are the villains of this story." Sophia pulled an envelope from her bag. "This proves that your friend William Thompson isn't as innocent as he wants to appear." Helena hesitated before taking the envelope. "Why should I trust you?" "Because I was used too, Helena. And because I know exactly how you feel. Betrayed, confused, questioning every decision you've made in the last few years." Sophia leaned forward. "Do you know why we chose you? It wasn't just because of your competence. It was because you reminded me of myself 15 years ago." The doorbell chimed as William entered the coffee shop. He froze when he saw Sophia, his expression shifting from surprise to something close to panic. "Helena, stay away from her." "Too late, William," Sophia declared, standing up calmly. "She already has the evidence." "What evidence?" Helena asked, still holding the unopened envelope. "Of the true origin of Project Phoenix," William replied, his voice tense. "Sophia, you don't understand. Revealing this now will unleash something we won't be able to control." "As if you hadn't already lost control long ago," Sophia shot back. "Tell her, William. Tell her how you and Albert planned everything. From the start. How the Institute was just the first phase of something much bigger." Helena opened the envelope, finding old photographs. In them, a younger William appeared alongside Albert Mendes in various situations, including one where they both signed documents in a luxurious office in London. "Albert and I were more than just partners," William began, sitting down heavily. "We were like brothers. We built the Thompson Empire together, even if only my name was on the facade. And then you betrayed him," Sophia accused. "No," William slammed the table, startling the waitress. "He betrayed me first. The Phoenix Project was our plan to revolutionize the US financial market, but Albert wanted to use methods I couldn't accept." Emily studied the photos intently. "This last photo, it's from the day Global Ventures was registered, isn't it?" Sophia nodded. "The day everything started to fall apart. Albert found out that William was secretly negotiating with the Chinese, planning to sell part of the operations without consulting him. It was the only way to stop him." A group of men in suits abruptly entered the cafe. Emily recognized one of them. It was the man who had been taking notes during her hearing. "We need to go," William urged, grabbing Emily by the arm. "Nathan." As if materializing from the shadows, Nathan appeared with two other security guards. Sophia took advantage of the confusion to slip out the back door, while William and Emily were escorted to a car waiting in the alley. "Who were those men?" Emily asked once they were on the move. "The true face of the Phoenix Project," William replied grimly. "Former federal agents that Albert hired to ensure the cooperation of certain people. And now? Now we're going to someone who can help us prove your innocence. But first," he grabbed his phone, dialing quickly. "Dr. Brown, get those documents we set aside ready. It's time to play our trump card." Emily watched the city pass by through the car window, the lights beginning to flicker on in the twilight. Sophia's envelope weighed heavily in her bag like lead. There was something in the photos that bothered her, some detail her brain was trying to process. Nathan, she called suddenly. The last photo, the one of the office in London, the date on the newspaper on the table. What about it? It was a week after I started at the bank. What if... She paused, a disturbing idea taking shape. What if I wasn't chosen afterward? What if everything from my hiring at the bank was part of the plan? Nathan was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was heavy with guilt. Emily, there's something I need to tell you about the day of your job interview, about who really recommended your hiring. The car stopped in front of an old mansion in Higienopolis. On the porch, a familiar figure awaited them. Andrea Miller, the former HR director of the bank, who had mysteriously disappeared 6 months before the accusations against Emily surfaced. Andrea Miller hadn't changed much since the last time Emily had seen her. The same elegantly styled grey hair, the same air of severity that intimidated so many employees. But there was something different in her eyes, a glimmer of someone carrying secrets too heavy to bear. "Come in," she gestured, leading them through a hallway decorated with antiques. "We're safe here. This house doesn't exist in any official records." In the mansion's library, Andrea served tea in fine porcelain cups. "I imagine Sophia has already shown you the photos," she commented, sitting in a leather armchair. "How did you know?" Emily asked. "Because I was the one who gave her the photos." Andrea cast a meaningful glance at Nathan. "I thought it was time for the truth to come out." Nathan sighed deeply. "Andrea was much more than the HR director, Emily. She was our connection to the financial system, the person who identified talents and potential targets." "Targets?" Emily felt a chill. "You were special," Andrea interrupted, placing her cup on the table. "Your hiring wasn't just part of the plan, you were the centerpiece of it." From her briefcase, Andrea pulled out a yellowed file. "This is your real HR file, not the official version, but what actually happened." She opened it to a specific page. "Your job interview was a sham. You were already selected before you even walked into that room." Emily took the file with trembling hands. There was her entire professional, academic, and personal history, with notes in the margins dating back years before her hiring. "Why?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Because you had something we needed," William replied. "Something even you didn't know you possessed." "The code," Andrea explained, standing up to grab another file. "Your father, before retiring, worked on a secret project at the Federal Reserve. He developed a revolutionary algorithm for tracking international financial transactions." Emily felt the world spin. "My father? But he was just an ordinary employee." "No, Emily," William interjected. "Your father was a cryptography genius who chose to live a quiet life, and somewhere at some point, he passed that knowledge on to you." "That's impossible," Emily protested. "I would remember." "Not if he hid the code in something seemingly innocent," Andrea suggested. "Something you did regularly without realizing its true meaning." The sound of a car screeching to a halt outside interrupted them. Nathan hurried into the library. "Sir, we need to go. Paul Richardson is coming with the police. They have a warrant." "How did they find us?" William asked, already on his feet. "The prosecutor," Andrea replied calmly. "She always knew where I was. She was just waiting for the right moment." Emily stared at a page in the file. "The spreadsheets," she murmured. "Every Friday at the bank, I updated a series of spreadsheets using a method my father taught me when I was a child." "The code was hidden in his work method," William concluded. "That's why Albert insisted so much on having access to all your files." Sirens began to wail in the distance. Andrea walked over to a panel on the wall, revealing a built-in safe. "We don't have much time. Emily, what you need to know is that your father didn't create this code to track transactions. He created it to hide them. And now it's being used to create an untraceable network of transactions," William finished. "The Phoenix Project wasn't just about money, Emily. It was about power, the power to move billions internationally without leaving a trace." Andrea handed Emily a flash drive. "Here's everything. The real transactions, the names involved, the proof of your innocence, but more importantly," she hesitated, "the truth about what happened to your father." The sirens were closer now. Nathan returned to the library. 2 minutes until they arrive. William grabbed Emily by the arm. "There's an exit through the back. Andrea—" "I'll be fine," the former director assured. "I have my own resources. Go." As they ran through the backyard, Emily clutched the flash drive in her hand. Her father, the spreadsheets, the code, everything connected in a way she could never have imagined. But one question still haunted her. "William," she called out once they were in the car, "if you knew all this from the beginning, why did you let me be accused? Why didn't you stop it?" The look he gave her was filled with guilt and something she couldn't quite decipher. Because there was one more person who needed to be protected, someone who means more to me than my entire empire. Before he could continue, a car appeared out of nowhere, cutting them off abruptly. Emily recognized the driver. It was Sofia Mendez. And in the passenger seat was none other than Albert Mendez, the man everyone believed had disappeared. Time seemed to freeze as Albert Mendez stepped out of the car, his imposing figure illuminated by the headlights. Emily felt William tense beside her, while Nathan discreetly reached for the holster under his jacket. "That won't be necessary," Albert said, his voice as calm as Emily remembered from the institute meetings. "We're all on the same side now." "Same side?" William let out a bitter laugh. "After everything you've done?" Sophia approached, still holding the car keys. "William, you don't understand. Everything we did was to protect the original project. Your project." Emily watched the scene with growing understanding. "My father's code. You didn't just want to use it, you wanted to perfect it." Perceptive as always, Albert smiled, but it was a tired smile. "Your father, Emily, was a visionary. He understood before any of us that the global financial system needed a revolution." Sirens wailed in the distance, reminding them of the urgency of the situation. Albert gestured toward a van parked in the shadows. "We have a safe place. We can talk there." William hesitated. "How can I trust you?" "Because I know about Marina," Albert replied simply. William's face visibly paled. Emily noticed the shift in his posture, as if an invisible weight had been added to his shoulders. "Who's Marina?" she asked. "The reason for all of this," Sophia answered before William could speak. "The true motivation behind Project Phoenix." Minutes later, they were all in a renovated warehouse in the port area, a surprisingly modern space inside, filled with state-of-the-art equipment. Emily recognized several screens displaying the same spreadsheets she used to update at the bank. "The code is everywhere," Albert explained, noticing her gaze. "Between the lines, in the seemingly random patterns. Your father designed it to be invisible to unprepared eyes." "But why?" Emily insisted. "Why all this secrecy?" William finally spoke, his voice heavy with emotion. "Because the code wasn't just for financial transactions. It was to protect people. Like Marina," Sophia added softly. William walked over to one of the screens, gently touching it. "Marina is my daughter," he revealed. "A daughter who officially doesn't exist, who needs to remain invisible for her own safety." Emily felt the weight of the revelation. "Because of your enemies in the market?" "Not just that," Albert interjected. "Marina was born with an extraordinary gift. Like her father, Emily. She can see patterns where others see only chaos. At just 12 years old, she perfected the original code without even knowing what she was doing. And now she's in danger," Sophia concluded. "Prosecutor Carter isn't just after the money. She found out about Marina." Nathan, who had been monitoring the security cameras, approached urgently. "Sir, we have suspicious movement on the perimeter." Albert quickly activated a series of monitors. "They followed us. The prosecutor must have tracked someone's cell signal. We need to get Emily out of here," William decided. "She's the only one who can prove the truth about the code now." "Not before she understands everything," Albert insisted, typing rapidly on one of the computers. "Emily, look at this." On the screen, an old security video appeared. Emily recognized her father, younger, talking to William in a cafe. The date showed 15 years ago. "Your father knew he was being followed," William explained. "He came to me because he needed someone with resources to protect his legacy. That's when we created the first draft of Project Phoenix." "And Marina?" Emily asked. "How does she fit into this?" "She was the first person besides you to instinctively manipulate the code," Albert replied. That's when we realized your father's work was more than a financial protection system. It was a completely new way of processing information. Suddenly, the lights in the warehouse flickered. Nathan came running back. They cut the main power. We're on the emergency generator. Emily looked at the flash drive Andrea had given her, then at the screens showing her father, and finally at William. A distant memory began to take shape in her mind. The spreadsheets from Friday, she murmured. They weren't just numbers, they were messages, coordinates. Her eyes widened with understanding. My father was mapping something big. William nodded gravely. And now you need to finish what he started, but first we need to get you out of here. The sound of helicopters began to echo over the warehouse. Sophia ran to a panel on the wall, revealing a hidden passage. This way. It leads to the canal. Before they could move, all the screens in the warehouse began to flicker simultaneously, displaying a sequence of numbers that Emily recognized instantly. Wait, she said, her voice trembling. That sequence, it's the same one I used to sign the spreadsheets. But I never... It's not you, William interrupted, his face a mask of concern. It's Marina, she's trying to tell us something. Emily ran to the nearest terminal, her fingers flying over the keyboard as she translated the number sequence. Years of working with the spreadsheets had made it almost instinctive for her. It's a warning, she announced, her voice urgent. Marina is saying that the prosecutor isn't alone. There's someone else, someone high up in the government. Minister Torres, Albert finished grimly. He's always been interested in the code ever since your father developed it. William grabbed his phone, typing quickly. We need more time. Doctor, Brown can stall the prosecutor with an emergency injunction, but it won't be for long. Sophia, who was monitoring the security cameras, interrupted. We've got movement at all entrances. They're surrounding the perimeter. Is there another way out? Emily asked, still typing. Marina is sending more information. Albert approached a digital map on the wall. The canal leads to an abandoned marina. I have a boat ready, but... He hesitated. We need at least 10 minutes to transfer the critical data. We don't have 10 minutes, Nathan warned, checking his own screens. Emily suddenly stopped typing. Wait, this doesn't make sense. She pointed to a specific sequence. Marina isn't just warning us. She's trying to tell us where she is. William quickly stepped closer. What do you mean? These coordinates... Emily furrowed her brow in concentration. They're from the old Federal Reserve Data Processing Center, the place where my father worked. Impossible, Albert protested. That place was decommissioned years ago. Exactly, Emily replied, a glimmer of understanding in her eyes. The perfect place to hide something you don't want found, or someone. Sophia checked her tablet. The building still belongs to the government, but there's no record of activity in the last 5 years. Marina found something, William murmured. Something in the old archives. That's why Minister Torres is involved. He doesn't just want the code. He wants to erase any trace of the original project. The sound of footsteps on the roof interrupted the conversation. Nathan quickly turned off the main lights, leaving only the glow of the monitors to illuminate the room. Emily, William called softly, you need to go with Sophia. She can take you to Marina. And you? Albert and I need to make sure they don't get the servers. Too many lives are at stake. Emily hesitated. William, there's something you're not telling me about my father, about the code. He held her hands, his gaze intense even in the dim light. Your father didn't create the code alone, Emily. He had help from your mother. The revelation hit Emily like a bolt of lightning. Her mother, who had disappeared when she was just a child, who her father said had gone, traveling. Is she alive? Emily asked, her voice barely a whisper. And protected, William confirmed. The code was only part of the project. The real goal was to create a protection network for people who knew too much. People the system wanted to silence. Sophia interrupted the moment. We need to go now. Emily impulsively hugged William. Promise me you'll meet me there. I promise, he replied, returning the embrace. And Emily, when you find Marina, tell her that her father never stopped looking for her. As Sophia guided Emily through the secret passage, the sounds of the warehouse being invaded grew louder. The last thing Emily saw before the door closed was William and Albert, positioned in front of the servers, ready to protect not just data, but years of secrets and sacrifices. In the dark tunnel, following Sophia with her heart racing, Emily finally understood. It wasn't just about money or power. It was about protection. Her father, her mother, Marina, they were all part of something bigger. An invisible network of extraordinary people who needed to stay in the shadows to survive. And now, with Andrea's flash drive in her pocket and the knowledge of the code in her mind, she was the only one who could complete the puzzle. The only link between the past her father had built and the future Marina had envisioned. Sophia stopped abruptly. "Do you hear that?" A soft sound of running water indicated they were close to the canal. But there was something else, a rhythmic pattern that Emily recognized immediately. "It's Morse code," she whispered, a smile forming on her lips. "Marina is guiding us." The old data processing center of the Federal Reserve was a brutalist construction from the 70s, its concrete walls stained by time, standing like a monument to a long, outdated technological era. Emily and Sophia arrived at the site as the first rays of sunlight began to tinge the sky pink. "How are we going to get in?" Emily asked, eyeing the security cameras that seemed to be deactivated. Sophia smiled, pulling a magnetic card from her pocket. "Some doors never really close." She hesitated before swiping the card. "Emily, before we go in, there's something you need to know about your mother. You knew her." "She was my mentor," Sophia revealed, surprising Emily. "Before she disappeared, she was developing an evolution of the code, something that went far beyond protecting transactions." The card slid silently through the reader, and the heavy door clicked open softly. The interior of the building was dark but not abandoned, as it appeared from the outside. LED lights flickered on modern equipment, camouflaged among the old machines. "It's like a time capsule," Emily murmured, recognizing some of the equipment from the stories her father used to tell. A soft sound of typing reached them from one of the upper floors. Sophia signaled for Emily to follow her quietly. As they climbed the stairs, the Morse code they had heard in the tunnel started again, clearer now. On the third floor, they found a room filled with monitors, and in front of them, a girl of about 12 was typing furiously, her fingers dancing, across multiple keyboards simultaneously. "Marina," Sophia called softly. The girl turned, and Emily felt her heart tighten. Marina's eyes had the same intensity as William's, but there was something more in them, something that reminded her of the old photos of her mother. "You must be Emily," Marina said, her voice surprisingly mature for her age. "I've been waiting for you. How did you know I would come?" "Because you're like me," Marina replied simply. "You see the patterns, don't you? Not just in numbers, but in everything." Emily stepped closer to the monitors. The screens displayed a complex web of data that seemed to pulse like a living organism. "What is all this?" "The network your mother started building," Marina explained. "She called it the Web of Light, a system that not only protects information, but connects it in ways no one ever imagined possible." Sophia interrupted. "Marina, we need to move. Minister Torres—" "I know," Marina nodded. "He's coming. But first, Emily needs to see this." With a few quick commands, Marina opened a specific file. It was a video dated 15 years ago. In it, Emily's mother, older than in her childhood memories, spoke directly to the camera. "Emily, my love," the recording began, making Emily hold her breath. "If you're seeing this, it means the time has come. The code your father created was just the beginning. What we discovered afterward, it would change everything. That's why we had to separate, to protect you and the future we dreamed of." Emily felt tears welling up as her mother continued. "The Phoenix Project was never about money or power. It was about creating a safety net for special people, people who see the world differently, people like you, like Marina, like so many others who need to remain invisible to survive." The sound of helicopters interrupted the recording. Sophia ran to the window. "They found the building." "I haven't finished the transfer yet," Marina warned, her fingers flying over the keyboards. Emily looked at the monitors, then at the flash drive Andrea had given her. An idea began to form in her mind. "Marina, you said I see the patterns. Show me how the web of light works. The girl smiled, moving aside to make room for Emily. It's like a dance, she explained. Every number, every sequence has its own rhythm. When you find the right rhythm, the patterns reveal themselves. Emily finished, starting to type. Years of working with spreadsheets had prepared her hands for this moment. Sophia, still monitoring the windows, reported, "We've got company, several cars approaching." "Almost there," Marina murmured, her eyes fixed on the screens where Emily was working. The code Emily was typing began to merge with the existing patterns in the web of light. It was as if the numerical sequences came to life, dancing and rearranging themselves into shapes she had always known were possible, but had never truly seen. "Emily," Marina called, her voice urgent, "look at this." On one of the screens, a familiar pattern began to emerge. It was the same sequence her father used to sign important documents, but there was something different about it now. "It's a location," Emily realized. "Not just a place, but an entire network of safe locations," Marina finished. "Your mother didn't disappear. She's—" The sound of heavy footsteps in the hallway interrupted the revelation. Sophia quickly locked the door, but everyone knew it wouldn't hold them off for long. "Emily!" Marina called, her voice now filled with determination. "There's only one way to protect all of this now, but you need to trust me completely." Emily looked at the girl, who somehow seemed to carry the wisdom of several generations in her young eyes. "What do we need to do?" "We need to become part of the web," Marina replied, extending her hands to the keyboards. "Are you ready?" The sound of authoritative voices and attempts to break down the door echoed through the hallway, but Emily barely heard them. Her focus was entirely on the patterns before her, on the invisible connections that had always existed, waiting to be discovered. Emily's and Marina's fingers moved in perfect sync over the keyboards, like an orchestra performing a complex symphony. On the main screen, the web of light pulsed and expanded, absorbing and reorganizing data into increasingly intricate patterns. "It's incredible," Sophia murmured, watching the digital spectacle while keeping guard at the door. "It's like the code is alive." "In a way it is," Marina replied, without taking her eyes off the screens. "Every sequence carries a bit of the energy of whoever created it. Your mother understood that before anyone else, Emily." A particularly loud bang on the door made Sophia flinch. "They've brought heavy equipment. We have 5 minutes at most." Emily barely registered the imminent danger. She was completely immersed in the code, uncovering levels of complexity she had never imagined possible. "Marina, look at this. When we alternate the sequences like this, the patterns self-replicate," Marina finished, excited. "It's like your mother described in the beta file. The web doesn't just protect information, it evolves it." A specific file began flashing on the screen, catching Emily's attention. It was a folder simply labeled Family. When she opened it, a cascade of images started to appear. Photos of people in different places, all connected by invisible lines of code. "They're all like us," Marina explained. "People who see the patterns, who need to stay in the shadows. Your mother created a safety net for all of them." Emily recognized some faces. Scientists who had disappeared over the years, artists who abandoned their careers at their peak, child prodigies who simply vanished from the spotlight. It wasn't just about hiding money or information, Emily realized. It was about creating a refuge, a place where special people could live in peace. The door shook on its hinges. Minister Torres's voice echoed down the hallway. "Last chance. Open up now, or we'll force our way in." Sophia checked her phone. No word from William or Albert. "They're fine," Marina assured, still typing. "Dad always has a plan B, and now—" She smiled at Emily. "We have a plan C." "What do you mean?" "Your mother left specific instructions in the code," Marina quickly explained. "An emergency sequence. That would activate a special protocol, but it needed 2 people to execute it. Someone with the original knowledge of the code, and someone with the ability to evolve it," Emily finished, understanding. "You and me." The sound of metal being cut indicated that the door wouldn't hold much longer. Sophia positioned herself strategically, ready for any confrontation. Emily, Marina called, her voice now urgent. When we activate the protocol, the web will completely reorganize itself. All the data, all the connections, everything will be redistributed across thousands of different points. Like a backup. No, Marina smiled. Like a metamorphosis. That's why it's called Project Phoenix. The system doesn't just protect itself. It's reborn, stronger and more complex. Emily looked at the monitors, at the photos of all those people who depended on the web, at the paused video of her mother. And what about us? What happens to us? We become part of it, Marina replied simply. Not physically, but our patterns, our codes, everything that makes us special becomes part of the network. The door began to give way. Sophia shouted, "Now or never." Helena looked one last time at the photo of her mother on the screen. So many years of secrets, of separation, all leading to this moment. "Marina, how do we start?" "As your mother always said," Marina smiled, her fingers poised. "Over the keyboard. Find the rhythm and dance with the numbers." Together they began typing the final sequence. On the main screen, the web of light pulsed faster and faster, its patterns transforming into something entirely new. It was as if all the knowledge, all the connections, all the protections built over decades were merging into a new form of digital existence. The door finally gave way. Minister Torres and his men burst into the room but stopped abruptly at the spectacle of lights and data unfolding on the monitors. "Stop immediately," Torres ordered, but his voice seemed distant, irrelevant. Helena barely heard him. She was completely immersed in the code, her fingers dancing with Marina's in a perfect choreography of numbers and sequences. On the screen, the transformation reached its peak. The web of light was no longer just a protection system. It was a living, pulsating organism, ready to embrace and protect all who needed it. "Helena," Marina whispered, a serene smile on her young face. "Welcome to the family." And then, in a flash of digital light, the web completed its metamorphosis, taking with it the secrets of generations and the hopes of a future where no one would need to hide anymore. The silence that followed the web's transformation was almost palpable. The monitors, once pulsing with digital life, now displayed only blank screens. Minister Torres and his men remained frozen, as if still trying to process what they had witnessed. Helena blinked several times, readjusting to physical reality. Something had fundamentally changed within her. It was as if her thoughts now flowed in a new rhythm, connected to an invisible yet tangible network of information and consciousness. "Impossible," Torres murmured, stepping closer to the computers. "Where is the data? What have you done?" Marina smiled serenely. "The data wasn't destroyed, Minister. It evolved. Just like us." Sophia, who had been watching everything with an expression of astonishment, suddenly brought her hand to her ear. "William is on his way, they did it." As if summoned by her words, sounds of commotion came from the floor below. Moments later, William and Albert entered the room, escorted by Nathan and a security team. Torres turned, his face twisted in fury. "Thompson, do you have any idea what you've done? Years of planning, billions in resources." "Transformed into something greater than your ambition, Torres," William interrupted, walking straight to Marina and embracing her. "Something you could never control." Emily watched the reunion of father and daughter with newfound understanding. Now she could see the patterns in the small things, the way their gestures mirrored each other, the subtle synchronization of their movements. "Minister," Albert spoke up, his voice carrying renewed authority. "I suggest you consider your position carefully. At this moment, evidence of your schemes is being sent to various investigative agencies." "Bluff," Torres challenged, but his voice betrayed uncertainty. "Not exactly," Marina interjected, still in her father's arms. "The web of light doesn't just protect information, it distributes it strategically. Every attempt you made to manipulate the system, every suspicious transaction, every threat, all of it has been documented and preserved." Emily felt a familiar tingling in her mind, like a code being executed. "And not just your actions, Minister. The web has identified all your collaborators, every connection, every shady deal." "So you can't prove anything," Torres argued. but his face had lost all color. "We don't need to prove it," William smiled. "The web will do that for us. Right now, algorithms that even I don't fully understand are reorganizing and distributing information in ways that make it impossible to hide." Sophia, who was monitoring her tablet, confirmed, "It's starting. The first pieces of evidence are already reaching the appropriate authorities." Torres made a sudden move toward the door, but Nathan and his team blocked the way. The minister looked around like a cornered animal until his gaze landed on Emily. "You're just like your mother," he said, his voice now laden with contained rage. She also refused to see the true potential of what she had created, the power we could have had. "My mother saw something much greater," Emily replied, feeling a new strength in her voice. "She saw that true power lies in protecting, not in controlling." As if summoned by her words, one of the screens suddenly came to life. A live broadcast showed a woman in a well-lit room, her face older than in Emily's memories, but unmistakable. "Mom," Emily whispered, stepping closer to the screen. "Hello, darling," Laura Johnson smiled, her image slightly distorted by the transmission. "It seems you've finally found your way to the web." Torres took a step toward the screen, but Albert stopped him with a gesture. Emily barely noticed the movement around her, completely focused on her mother's face. "Where are you?" "At one of the secure nodes of the network," Laura replied. "One of the many places we created for people like us. And now..." She looked at Marina with a knowing smile. "It seems the next generation is ready to take its place." William approached Emily, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Laura was the one who reached out to me first when she realized Marina had inherited the gift. She helped us keep her safe all these years." "And now?" Emily asked, looking from her mother on the screen to William and then to Marina. "Now," Marina answered, her eyes gleaming with a wisdom beyond her years, "the real transformation begins. The web is no longer just a protective system. It's a new kind of community, a refuge for everyone who needs to stay in the shadows to make a difference in the world." Laura nodded on the screen. "Emily, you always wondered why you had to do those spreadsheets every Friday. It wasn't just an exercise or a way to hide information. It was training. Every sequence you typed strengthened your natural connection to the web, preparing you for this moment." Torres, who had remained silent, finally spoke. "You can't just create a parallel system of power. There are rules, hierarchies." "The rules have changed, Minister," Albert interjected. "In fact, they're constantly changing, evolving along with the web. And this time you won't be part of that evolution." As if to confirm his words, the sound of sirens began echoing from the streets below. Sophia, checking her tablet, announced, "The first wave of evidence has been confirmed. The federal police are on their way." Emily turned her attention back to the screen where her mother smiled serenely. So many questions still lingered in her mind, but now, connected to the web, she knew she would have time for all the answers. What mattered was that she had finally found her place, her true family. "Emily," Marina called softly, extending her hand. "Are you ready to meet the others?" Through the web, Emily could feel the presence of hundreds of other special minds, all connected, all working in harmony for a greater purpose. It was the dawn of a new era, one where the gifted no longer needed to hide in the shadows. 3 months had passed since the transformation of the web. The old data processing center had been turned into a hub of technological innovation, officially, under the direction of the Thompson Group, but secretly serving as one of the main nodes of the new network. Emily walked through the renovated halls, watching young talents working on projects most people would consider impossible. Each of them had been identified by the web, brought out of the shadows to a place where their unique gifts could flourish, without fear. "The new code is working perfectly," Marina commented, catching up to Emily with a tablet in hand. At 12 years old, she was already leading a development team, though few knew her true age or identity. "Your mother would be proud," William said, appearing quietly behind them. He had changed over the past few months, the weight of the corporate empire giving way to a more meaningful mission. Emily smiled, remembering her last meeting with her mother, now settled at one of the network's research centers in Europe. Laura continued her work, identifying and protecting special individuals around the world. "Minister Torres was formally indicted this morning," Albert informed, joining the group. After the web revealed the evidence, a series of investigations had exposed a corruption network that reached multiple levels of government. "And Prosecutor Carter?" Emily asked, though she already knew the answer through the web. "She struck a cooperation deal," Sophia replied, approaching with her ever-present tablet. "She's assisting in investigations of other similar cases." The group headed to the main meeting room, now equipped with cutting-edge technology that allowed direct connection to the web. On the main screen, a global map showed points of light representing each node of the network, each special person connected to the system. "It's incredible how much we've grown in such a short time," Emily remarked, watching new points of light, constantly appearing. "It's just the beginning," Marina replied, her fingers dancing over a holographic keyboard. "Every day we identify more people like us, each contributing their own frequency to the web." William watched his daughter with evident pride. "The world is changing faster than we imagined. The web is becoming more than a protection system. It's a new form of collective consciousness. And with that, new responsibilities," Albert added. "Every person we bring into the network needs to understand the delicate balance between power and protection." Emily felt a familiar tingling in her mind. Someone was accessing the web from a new node. Closing her eyes, she could see the patterns forming the unique signature of a new mind connecting to the network. "It's a girl in Miami," Marina announced, also sensing the new connection. 16 years old, a math prodigy. She started seeing the patterns a few weeks ago. "Like I did," Emily murmured, recalling her own discoveries. "Sophia, could you—" "Already on it," Sophia confirmed, typing rapidly. "A team is on their way to make first contact." William approached the window, gazing at the city stretched out below. "You know, Emily, when I first started helping you with that trial, I never imagined we'd end up here." "None of us did," Emily smiled, joining him. "But maybe this was the plan all along. My mother, your father, Marina, all of us being guided to this moment." A soft alert chimed through the system, drawing everyone's attention. On the main screen, a message began to form, the patterns arranging themselves into a familiar sequence. "It's from your mother," Marina announced, smiling. "She's identified another group in Asia, people like us who've developed their own protection systems." "The web is growing organically now," Albert observed. "Not just protecting information, but connecting brilliant minds around the world." Emily felt a wave of emotion as she watched her mother's code dance across the screen. Each sequence carried not just information, but memories, feelings, hopes. The web had become more than any of them had dreamed. It was a living testament to the power of collaboration, mutual protection, and human potential when freed from the shackles of fear and greed. "Emily," Marina called softly, "do you want to do the honors? The girl in Miami is waiting for her first contact." With a smile, Emily sat down at the main terminal. Her fingers found the keys naturally, as if coming home. It was time to welcome another member of the family, to share the story of how a group of special people had turned a protection system into a network of hope. And as her fingers danced across the keyboard, Emily could feel all the connections of the web vibrating in harmony. A constant reminder that sometimes the greatest treasures are born from the shadows, and that true power lies not in control, but in protecting those who see the world differently. 6 months later, the Thompson group had been completely transformed. The imposing building on Fifth Avenue still maintained its corporate facade, but its true treasures now resided in the upper floors, where a new generation of brilliant minds worked under the protection of the web. Emily was in her new office, formerly Williams, when Sophia entered with urgent news. "The trial is over," Sophia announced, a subtle smile on her lips. "All charges against you have been officially dropped." Emily nodded, though the news no longer carried the same weight as before. "And Paul Richardson? He's reached a cooperation agreement. He's helping dismantle other corrupt cells in the financial system." Sophia checked her tablet. "But there's something more important. Andrea Miller has made contact." That captured Emily's full attention. Andrea had disappeared shortly after, that night at the mansion, leaving only cryptic clues about other groups that needed protection. What did she find? "Not what, but who," Marina replied, entering the room with her characteristic restrained enthusiasm. She found more children, like me, in different countries, all manifesting unique abilities with patterns and codes. William, who was on a video call in the corner of the room, ended his conversation and joined them. The new generation is emerging faster than we expected. It's the web, Emily explained, feeling the familiar patterns dancing in her mind. It's not just connecting special people. It's creating an environment where new talents can awaken naturally. Sophia projected a holographic map in the center of the room. Points of light pulsed at different intensities, each representing a node in the network. The most interesting part is the emergence pattern. It's following exactly the sequence your mother predicted 15 years ago. Emily stepped closer to the hologram, watching the connections form like digital constellations. She always knew this would happen. That's why she created the original code, not just to protect, but to pave the way. "Emily," Marina called, her voice carrying an unusual urgency. "There's something you need to see." With a few quick commands, she opened a series of files on the main screen. They were old records, dated even before the beginning of Project Palm. Phoenix. In them, Emily's father had meticulously documented his early observations of unique patterns in certain individuals. He wasn't alone in his research, Marina explained, highlighting specific names and dates. There were others, in different parts of the world, all reaching the same conclusions. "A natural convergence," William added, as if the universe itself were conspiring for this moment. Albert, who had entered the room quietly, added, "And now we have even greater responsibilities. The web isn't just a protection system, it's a legacy for the next generations." Emily felt a familiar vibration in her mind. Her mother was connecting to the network. Laura's image appeared on one of the screens, her face radiant with news. "The first training center in Europe is ready," she announced, "and you won't believe who reached out to us." The camera moved, revealing a figure that made everyone hold their breath. Clara Torres, the daughter of the former minister, now 15 years old. She had begun to manifest abilities similar to Marina's. "The irony of fate," Sophia murmured. "It's not irony," Emily corrected gently. "It's the final proof that the web is beyond old rivalries and conflicts. It chooses its own paths." William stepped closer to Marina, placing a protective hand on her shoulder. "How are you handling all of this, daughter, with all these changes?" Marina smiled, that wise smile that seemed to carry centuries of knowledge. "For the first time in my life, Dad, I don't feel different or out of place. In the web, we are all part of something greater." Emily watched the interaction between father and daughter with affection. The journey that had begun with what seemed like a simple trial had transformed into something far larger than any of them. The web wasn't just a safety net, it was a new kind of family, a global community of extraordinary minds united by a common purpose. "Emily," her mother called from the screen, "we found something in your father's old archives. Something he left specifically for this moment." With a mental command, Laura transmitted a sequence of codes that made Emily's eyes widen. It was a message, written years ago but intended specifically for the future they were building. "To my daughter," Emily read aloud, her hands trembling slightly, "and to all those who will see the patterns others cannot. The world is changing, faster than we can comprehend, but you will be the guardians of this transformation. The web is not just our creation, it is a natural evolution of human consciousness, the next step in our collective journey." Her father's words echoed through the room, carrying a prophetic weight that made everyone pause. The web had become more than a refuge or a tool for protection. It was a testament to humanity's ability to evolve, to adapt, to find new ways of connection and understanding. And as new points of light continued to appear on the holographic map, Emily knew they were only at the beginning of something truly extraordinary. The future her father had envisioned, her mother had helped build, and Marina represented, was just beginning to unfold. A year after the web's transformation, Emily was back at the old data processing center, now completely renovated and unrecognizable. The place that once housed obsolete machines had become a sanctuary of innovation and discovery. where young talents from around the world gathered to learn how to control and develop their unique gifts. "It's surreal to think how it all started," William commented, watching a group of children practicing pattern visualization under Marina's guidance. "With a false accusation and a trial that seemed so simple." Emily smiled, remembering those early days of uncertainty and mistrust. "Nothing is ever really simple when it comes to the web, is it?" Sophia approached them, her tablet now an almost organic extension of herself. "Andrea just reported from Asia. The new node in Singapore is operational, and we've already identified 3 more children with special abilities in the region." "What about the expansion project in Latin America?" Emily asked, though she could already sense the answer through the web. "Your mother is personally overseeing it," Albert replied, joining the group. "Laura has a special talent for identifying dormant potential." In the training area, Marina had finished her session with the children. At 13, she had become a natural mentor for the younger ones, her intuitive understanding of the web, helping others develop their own connections. "Emily," Marina called, approaching with a special gleam in her eyes, "I think we've found another one like Dad." William raised his eyebrows, intrigued. It was rare to find adults who developed natural connections with the web. In most cases, the gift manifested in childhood or early adolescence. "A university professor in Austin," Marina explained. "He started seeing patterns in his students' research, connections no one else noticed. Like your father saw in you," William added softly, embracing his daughter. Emily felt a familiar vibration in the web. Her mother was initiating a global transmission. On the screens around the room, the image of Laura Johnson materialized, accompanied by Andrea Miller and, surprisingly, Clara Torres. "We have important news," Laura began, her face radiant. "The first group of children trained by the web is ready to take on broader responsibilities." Clara Torres, now more mature and focused, took the floor. "We've discovered that we can not only see the patterns, but actively influence them. It's like rewriting the code of the universe itself." Emily exchanged a meaningful glance with Marina, who had already demonstrated similar abilities. The web was evolving faster than any of them had anticipated, creating possibilities that challenged their very understanding of reality. "This brings us to a crucial point," Andrea continued. "The next phase of Project Phoenix is about to begin. And this time we won't just be observers or protectors. We'll be catalysts for fundamental change." William stepped closer to Emily, his expression serious but hopeful. "You always knew we'd get here, didn't you? Ever since that first time you saw the patterns in the spreadsheets." Emily shook her head, smiling. "Actually, I think we all knew, even without realizing it. Every choice, every decision brought us to this moment." Sophia, who had been analyzing data on her tablet, suddenly caught everyone's attention. "Look at this. The energy patterns of the web. They're aligning in a way we've never seen before." In the center of the room, the holographic map pulsed with a new intensity. The points of light representing each node of the network began to connect in increasingly complex patterns, forming a web of infinite possibilities. "It's like your father wrote," Laura commented from the screen, her eyes glistening with held-back tears. "The next step in our collective journey." Marina stepped closer to the hologram, her hands dancing in the air as if she could touch the patterns of light. "So it's not just a protective network anymore. It's a new path for humanity, a bridge between what we are and what we can become." Emily felt the weight of those words, finally understanding the true extent of the legacy they had inherited and the future they were helping to build. The web wasn't just a system or a community, it was a promise to future generations, a testament to the limitless potential of the human mind when freed from the shackles of fear and distrust. "So," William asked, looking around at everyone in the room, "are we ready for the next chapter?" Emily smiled, feeling the energy of the web flowing through her, connecting her to all the brilliant minds that were part of this extraordinary family. "The next chapter." She took Marina's hand, feeling the power of past and future generations flowing between them. "I think we're just beginning the real story." And so, as the sun set over New York, casting golden shadows through the windows of the center, Emily knew they had found something far greater than protection or power. They had discovered a new kind of hope, one that transcended the limitations of the known world and pointed toward a future where patterns no longer needed to hide in the shadows. A future where every special mind could shine in its own unique frequency, contributing to the greater symphony of evolving human consciousness.